He is the most hated and despised mage instructor. Not only is his magic weak and his teaching ability lacking, but the one thing he excels at is using his noble status to harass female students. So naturally, everyone hates him, seeing him as trash who only got into the academy thanks to his family's influence. But what they don't know is that Vermil has died and is now possessed by someone from Earth who not only understands the principles of magic, but has also acquired magic power from two gods. The story begins with Noah's consciousness drifting endlessly through darkness, lost in a void where neither good nor bad memories surface. Even his own name slips away as only emptiness remains, until a faint glimmer appears. A sense of existence returns, as though pulled by an unseen thread. Suddenly his soul hurls into countless lives, flashing through worlds that reject him one after another, casting him back into the void repeatedly. After endless failed reincarnation, he finally comes to a stop. He emerges in a small forest clearing, where trees loom like withered hands stretching toward the sky. Instead of a newborn child or a mother, a greasy-haired man kneels on the ground, panting heavily. From his belt, the man pulls a gourd, breaks its seal, and drinks. Halfway through, his eyes widen in horror as he clutches his throat. The gourd slips from his grasp, liquid spilling across the dirt, and his body collapses lifeless. Noah's soul pulls into the man's body, and at last it holds. For the first time in so long, finally he has been reborn. He burst into laughter, mixed with disbelief. He considers himself lucky to have been reincarnated in the body of a fully grown man. Rubbing his temples, our protagonist mutters his name, Noah. He remembers fragments of his past life. Although his memories are jumbled, he feels as if he has been waiting for a very long time, yet he cannot remember no matter how hard he tries. Now he begins to wonder about the identity of the body he possesses and why he has a bitter taste in his mouth. But it does not take long for him to discover the cause. The contents seem foreign to him, yet he somehow understands them. It carries a message for Magus Vermil, the host, promising that it is a healing potion, but judging by our protagonist's expression, the potion does the opposite. Anyways, he decides to focus on it later. Observing his surroundings, he wonders why the corpses of creatures that look like monkeys are scattered around. Yet they do not seem responsible for the wounds across Vermil's chest. Whatever that creature might be, our protagonist only hopes it is long gone. Unfortunately, the creature is still lurking. A massive, grotesque monster leaps above him. The monster looks like an adult version of the small monkeys, but far more fierce. The massive monkey immediately moves to kill him. Our boy is left frozen, wondering where on earth he has been reborn. By sheer luck, he dodges the first strike, and the monster begins chasing him. Each strike comes closer than the last. Our boy runs while thinking about whether he is going to die as a coward. Deciding to fight back or die trying, he stops to confront the monkey. But he quickly realizes he does not have a plan. Just as the monkey is about to cut him down, our boy raises his hand, and blue energy gathers in his palm. The monkey narrowly dodges the wind magic. Our protagonist collapses to the ground. He is momentarily stunned that he can actually wield magic. However, this creates the perfect opening. His head is sliced off like butter, and just like that, he dies instantly. His soul emerges from Vermil's body. He comments that such a quick death should be a world record. The moment he begins to ascend, he thinks about his past life. That thought freezes him, and his scrambled memories finally resurface with clarity. You see, our protagonist is one of the people who believed something awaited them after death. But he never imagined he would be waiting in such a long line. The line is so long that the only thing he can do to pass the time is reflect on his life. Speaking of his life, it was not that great either. He never married or had children, and he did not get the chance to die of old age. The only thing he had was a degree he found useless. The only thing he truly loved and kept remembering was when he taught music. In the end, none of it matters now. He could only follow the line. He keeps walking until he eventually loses count of how many years have passed. Finally, he reaches the end. At the end of the line is some kind of summit. Lost in thought. A female voice speaks, as if reading from his life's record. She notes that he died at the age of 26. In addition, 84 of his students prayed for him. Hearing this, our protagonist sighs in relief, thankful that his life had at least affected others in a positive way. The woman agrees, adding that he has lived a good life. When Noah asks if she is a god, she responds by introducing herself as Renewal, the goddess of reincarnation. She instructs Noah to drink from the foundation to begin his rebirth, but warns that his memories will be lost in the process. Hearing this, Noah is surprised. He is about to ask something, but Renewal suddenly becomes distracted by a crack in her space. Suddenly, an explosion erupts. Dark energy spills into her domain. Noah watches in shock, wondering if what he is seeing can truly happen in the afterlife. The atmosphere turns tense when another god invades Renewal's domain. The man speaks, calling Renewal beautiful and saying he has missed her. She responds sharply, saying he must enjoy being defeated. And just like that, the battle begins. The man breaks Renewal's shield and cuts her. As a result, her blood spills into the foundation of rebirth. Meanwhile, our boy watches and wonders what will happen if he dies in the afterlife. Deciding he does not want to find out, he prepares to leave. Meanwhile, the man taunts Renewal, asking if that is all she has. In response, she says he is not trying hard enough for her to get serious. Provoked, the man teleports behind her, but Renewal anticipates the attack. Because of this, he loses an arm. At the same time, his blood mixes with Renewal's blood in the foundation of Reincarnation. As a result of the chaos, our protagonist is sent flying into the water and accidentally drinks the water mixed with both deities' blood. At this point, the flashback comes to an end. Knowing this, our protagonist becomes concerned, wondering if he has to wait in line again, assuming the line even still exists. In the middle of his thoughts, a black ribbon suddenly wraps around his neck and pulls his soul back into Vermil's body. Because of this, our protagonist wakes up in Vermil's body once again. He stares in confusion, wondering how he suddenly came back to life. Confusion consumes him as he realizes the truth. Death becomes a cycle. Again and again, dozens, perhaps hundreds of times, he revives only to fall once more. Each time, it always begins near the same cursed gourd. The torment is nearly intolerable, yet it remains more bearable than the soul-crushing monotony of the endless queue he once endured. Eventually, he recovers Vermil's possessions, though his magic never fully returns. Despite this, each death brings new insight. The monkeys he encounters in battle consistently rely on a limited set of attacks. Over time, their patterns become familiar. His physical strength and speed have not increased, but his skill in evasion has sharpened. He is about to face another monkey. The monkeys assault him relentlessly, but he dodges their strikes with ease. In response, Noah delivers a straight punch that ends the monkey. Later, a group of men flying on swords appears overhead. Noah makes a call for help, hoping to be heard. He is momentarily stunned to see real people surfing on swords. One of the men notices him and expresses shock at his battered condition, asking what has transpired. The truth is not an option. Vermil's purpose and identity remain unknown, so Noah offers a fabricated story. A monkey has struck his head, causing memory loss. He adopts the name Vermil, uncertain whether the deception will hold. The men exchange glances, preparing to strike. He quickly presents a badge in hopes of confirming his identity. Recognition follows. Vermil is known as a teacher at Academy. Noah recounts his strange encounter with the monkey-like creature, only to be corrected by one of the men, who refers to them as Hell Reavers instead. He has that confused expression as the group begins speaking in a language he recognizes, but with grammar so twisted and unfamiliar, it leaves him struggling to follow. The blonde-haired man stands out, wearing an unmistakable look of pride. He is clearly bragging, and his companion rolls their eyes, unimpressed but used to the routine. With a smirk, the blonde man turns to Noah and casually invites him to hitch a ride to the arbitrage. He reveals his name to be Frederick. Cautiously, Noah mounts the flying sword, and he poses a question about safety. Frederick reassures him, but advises holding on tightly as they are about to ascend into the sky. While airborne, Noah's thoughts race. He wonders if Vermil had indeed been a professor at Arbit. Recognition there is inevitable. The people who tried to kill him might even reside within the academy. Soon, Arbit City comes into view, a renowned center of runic study. Upon landing, Frederick welcomes his return, addressing him as professor. Frederick assures him that the Academy's experts can provide assistance. Suddenly, a skeptical man approaches, commenting on rumors of Vermil's return and suggesting the absence has been intentional. Noah notices the man's tone carries a hint of condescension. He gives a response, citing memory loss and a head injury. The man scrutinizes his appearance and questions if Noah recognizes him. Pressed for answers, Noah guesses, asking if the man is a doctor. The man sighs, revealing the guess is incorrect. Introducing himself as Richard, he explains his expertise in healing runes. With a practiced motion, Richard places a hand on Noah's chest, preparing to assess the injury. Anxiety surges, the magic might expose the truth. But before that can happen, Frederick attempts to speak, citing his discomfort. But Richard interrupts, muttering that Noah is human. Suspicion lingers as Richard notes the disordered state of his mind. Calmly, Noah suggests rest might resolve the memory issues. Richard remains doubtful, stating that only time will determine recovery and calling the situation tragic. After expressing gratitude to Frederick, Richard promises a reward for his assistance. Frederick replies that any honorable man would have done the same and wishes Noah well. Richard then announces plans to inform the headmaster of the return and current condition. Upon noticing hesitation when asked about the room, Richard sighs and agrees to escort him personally. Shifting to the room, Richard asks for the key. But Noah shrugs, unable to produce it. Muttering, Richard activates a rune to unlock the door. Inside, the room is a complete mess. Papers strewn across the floor. Richard promises to send someone to check in soon and advises staying put. Meanwhile, Noah observes the mess, and it is clear Vermil lacked tidiness. Richard departs, not forgetting to give Noah a suspicious stare, slamming the door behind him. Amid the clutter, a key on the table catches his attention. Why had Vermil left it behind? Sitting down, he decides to make sense of the disorder. He also finds the situation favorable since he was a teacher back on Earth. He notices a note addressed to a student. Meet me in my room an hour after class if you want that extension. That message says everything about Magnus Vermil being a scoundrel, perhaps explaining the motive for his murder. That aside, he finds a schedule that reveals the subject he teaches is magic. How can he teach magic without the ability to wield it? Just as he begins contemplating what to do, a knock interrupts his thoughts. A man enters, introducing himself as Braden. He has heard of the return and asks what has happened. Noah gives an improvised explanation that an injury has caused memory loss. Braden scoffs. He mentions a class scheduled in an hour and offers to find a substitute if needed. Noah attempts to accept, but is interrupted by Braden, who insists on arranging a thorough examination. Understanding, Noah makes a quick decision. Basically, he doesn't want anyone to probe into his mind, so he assures that he can handle the class. Since he is still figuring things out, a question follows. Where is the class located? Braden responds with exasperation, stating it is in Building A, Room 2. He makes a crucial warning. Failure of students would reflect poorly on the Linwicks, hoping Noah understands the implications. With that, Braden slams the door. Noah thanks him, affirming his commitment to attend. At the same time, somewhere in the forest, a shadowy figure appears, dragging one of Noah's leftover corpses into some kind of abyss. We are taken to Building G of the Magic Academy. The building seems to be in complete mess, as if it is abandoned. Meanwhile, Noah races across the campus, muttering curses under his breath. Frustration mounts as the confusing layout of the building delays him further. His concern grows that the students might leave if he fails to arrive within the first 15 minutes. Upon bursting through a door, he scans the room with uncertainty, questioning whether he has found the correct location. The classroom appears long neglected, and its remote placement puzzles him. Breathing heavily, he notes the absence of any students or faculty along his route. While surveying the room for anything of use, the soft sound of approaching footsteps interrupts his thoughts. A girl enters, clutching a glowing blue orb, her expression marked by surprise. She questions Noah's presence, and he responds, feeling out of place, that he is the instructor. Another student soon follows, directing a curious glance at the girl, Isabel, and asking whom she is speaking to. Upon seeing Noah, the student freezes in disbelief, remarking that Noah has never attended class before. Noah, equally stunned, realizes the students are nearly his own age. The boy nudges Isabel, suggesting that Noah is unaware class has begun 40 minutes earlier. Isabel scoffs, speculating that Noah has expected the room to be empty. Determined to maintain composure, Noah resolves to remain calm and win over the students. With a strained smile, he announces that the session will be exceptional. Isabel's suspicion surfaces immediately, prompting her to question his intentions. Noah denies any ulterior motives, asserting that his sole purpose is to teach. Isabel and the boy, Todd, exchange glances, noting that Noah's demeanor differs from his usual behavior. Noah offers an explanation, claiming to have suffered a head injury resulting in minor memory loss, but insists the lesson will proceed. He instructs them to take their seats, inwardly amused by the opportunity to extract answers from the pair. Todd clarifies that no other students are expected. Only he and Isabel are assigned to Noah. Accepting the situation, Noah remarks that 2 students are preferable to none and urges them to sit. Skepticism lingers. Todd points out that their rank matches Noah's, and Isabel dismisses the notion that Noah can instruct them. To them, Noah's position stems from ties to the influential Linwick family, a name Noah has encountered before. Isabel proposes a deal: exemption from the exam in exchange for staying out of his way. Todd supports the idea, hoping for leniency. Noah, however, remains resolute. Despite lacking talent, he suggests possessing experience they might not share. Isabel rejects the claim with arrogance, but Noah persists, intent on capturing their attention for the remainder of the class. Attempts to undermine him follow, including references to a scandal involving a student. Noah silences them, asserting his authority and demanding the respect owed as an instructor, although he can't blame them thanks to the host's creepy behavior. Turning to the blackboard, he announces the topic: runes. As if on cue, the board collapses with a loud crash, startling him. Regaining composure, he poses a question about the nature of runes. At first, the group doesn't take him seriously, seeing the topic as basic elementary questions. Regardless, Todd responds with a simplistic and dismissive definition, describing them as vessels of energy used for casting magic. Noah notes the answer on the blackboard, but appearing dissatisfied, he criticizes the explanation as shallow, clarifying that the inquiry concerns the essence of a rune, not its function. The students appear confused, unable to grasp the distinction. Recognizing their lack of understanding, Noah explains that mastery of any tool requires comprehension at its most fundamental level. For someone that doesn't know magic, he could bet, judging from their expression, that no one knows runes magic down to the basic. True to his words, neither Todd nor Isabel can provide a proper answer. In response, Noah emphasizes that awareness of one's limitations marks the beginning of true understanding. He then asks what magic is capable of achieving. Isabel responds with anything, prompting Noah to challenge the notion of limitless magic. But he is inwardly stunned by the discovery. Todd interjects, noting that only one rune can be used at a time, and Isabel adds that resurrection is impossible. Noah agrees, acknowledging magic's boundaries and stressing the importance of understanding its foundational elements. Internally, he entertains the possibility that magic can indeed revive the dead due to his experience. Anyways, Todd says no one knows what runes are, and Noah can't possibly be saying that only he does. Noah remarks that runes remain enigmatic and subject to ongoing study, asserting that anyone claiming complete knowledge is either dishonest or delusional. He then begins sketching a rune on the board. Todd and Isabel watch in astonishment. Todd, wide-eyed, asks if the rune is Noah's own. Noah confirms it is indeed a rune. Their shock intensifies upon realizing it has been drawn before them. Noah, sensing he may have revealed too much, explains that the rune has come from his book, while wondering if he had made a mistake doing this. Todd, still skeptical, asks if viewing the rune comes without consequence. Isabel mutters that Noah might truly have suffered a head injury. Maintaining composure, Noah replies that a teacher's duty is to educate, though he needs to exercise caution when probing further in the future. He then asks if they can identify the rune. The response identifies it as a rank 1 lesser fire rune. The mention of ranks surprises Noah, prompting him to seek clarification. Todd eagerly explains that lesser runes hold less magical energy, offer weaker control, and are generally inferior to greater runes. Nonetheless, he argues that lesser runes can still be effective and demonstrates by launching a flame through the ceiling. Noah nods in encouragement, though he is internally alarmed. Seeing that they have made good progress, he clears his throat and asks again for a definition of a rune. When they didn't respond, our protagonist reiterates that acknowledging ignorance is the first step toward understanding. He then asks if anyone wishes to add something, perhaps explaining what a rune does. Hearing this, Todd speaks up. He says that runes can be combined and used to imbue objects, though our protagonist can tell from his tone that he is uncertain. With that out of the way, he assigns the task of contemplating rune composition for the next class. Turning to Isabel, he inquires about her method of accessing runes. To him, this is the most important question that needs answer. She hesitantly describes a sensation of sinking into one's soul, but expresses doubt about its completeness. Noah encourages further exploration, inviting them to concentrate on their runes and observe the outcome. He also plans to do the same. As Todd and Isabel close their eyes, Noah joins them in an attempt to connect with his own runes. Noah focuses intently, believing the task to be simple. His confidence stems from the fact he has been a soul for a long time. Not long after, he can sense the trait of his rune magic within him, and the first to appear is the wind blast he used on the grotesque creature. Along with other runes which he easily recognizes from Vermeil's journal, he has a total of 7 runes, 5 wind runes and 2 ash runes. He attempts to combine an ash rune and a wind rune, experimenting with Todd's hypothesis of combining runes. At that moment, he feels something wrong. He feels an immense pressure in his head, as if his skull could split into 2. At the same time, a strange, large purple rune forms behind Noah, resulting in Noah breaking out in a cold sweat, simply because the rune itself reminds him of Renewal's foe, whose name we still don't know. The very next scene takes us to his room. Noah once again focuses intently on his soul. The runes begin functioning once more. Excitement surges briefly before a sudden wave of fatigue subdues it. He realizes magic, like energy, has its limits. Despite the weariness, our protagonist notes the momentum of progress is exhilarating. However, much remains to be discovered. Later that same day, Noah moves through the pathway in the campus. Maintaining a hurried demeanor, he hopes to avoid unwanted interactions. Yet, the whispers among the students intensify his unease, especially those concerning the host's tarnished reputation. The memory of the note Vermeil penned resurfaces. Because of this, our protagonist thinks Vermeil deserves a punch. Regardless, he proceeds with his main objective. Upon reaching the academy library, he pushes the door open, revealing a space far more refined than the classroom. Spotting the section reserved for professors, he knows that is the intended destination. Approaching the counter, Noah makes a request for books to the elderly man stationed there. When asked about the type of books needed, he asks for a simple introduction to runes, the basic stuff. Before a response can be given, a woman appears, her disdain evident on her face. She ridicules the request, suggesting the Linwick lineage has deteriorated if such basic knowledge is being sought. Noah, on the other side, has no recollection of her. However, her scorn deepens as she questions why his family's resources aren't being utilized. Noah gives a swift reply, stating that using the Linwick's assets for something so trivial is wasteful, especially when the library holds all necessary materials. The answer momentarily surprises her, though skepticism remains. She finds the idea of him being a professor at rank 1 pathetic. As her finger crackles with magic before releasing a spell, she references his past indiscretions involving magic to blow up the skirts of female students. The old man attempts to intervene, but the spell has already struck. Because of this, our protagonist confirms Vermeil's reputation and understands why everyone hates him. But it's not like he can do anything about it for now. Anyways, he apologizes, explaining that he wishes to change his ways. In response, Moxie sneers and dismisses his apology. She says she would love to call him the disgrace of the Linwick family, but that would be a compliment. That stings, and our protagonist realizes she truly hates him. He notices she was interested in face stealers. Normally, anyone would think she was acting like a jerk, but based on what he knows, he believes Vermeil deserves it. Because of this, he begins to suspect that perhaps she is among the people who want to kill him. Dismissing that thought for later, he turns back to the main reason he came to the library. The scene transitions to Vermeil's room, where Noah sits, contemplating the mechanics of his runes. He knows the giant purple rune isn't normal, so he ignores it and shifts his focus to the other runes. Because of this, he wonders why Vermeil possesses lesser runes. From what he has discovered so far, Vermeil likely comes from a powerful family, so it doesn't make sense why he has lesser runes instead of stronger ones. To find out more, our protagonist enters his soul state. Inside his soul, 7 runes appear. Noah counts 5 wind runes and 2 ash runes. Despite having multiple lesser wind runes, they feel different. One in particular feels emptier than the rest. He explains that the runes seem to act like both a power source and a container. By killing monsters, he can easily refill them. He knows this because he felt his energy increase after killing a monster. Our protagonist casually explains runes like some universal principle. He continues, explaining that although the ash runes contain less energy, they feel stronger than the wind runes. This further confirms his theory that lesser runes are weaker compared to higher runes. Our protagonist grows excited, because if he replaces the lesser runes with greater ones, he can become stronger. In addition, if he discovers how to combine them, he could become completely overpowered. With this in mind, he decides to experiment with his wind rune. Using wind magic, he slices a stack of paper with ease. Seeing this result, he wonders if he can use wind magic in other ways, perhaps even to fly. When he tries to use his ash rune magic, nothing happens. Feeling lost, he decides to focus on what works. Thinking about it, an idea strikes him. What if he uses wind magic to clean his room? Moments later, he feels slightly disappointed, as the result isn't as perfect as he imagined, but it's still acceptable. Feeling drained, he decides to call it a day. After taking a warm bath, he goes through Vermeil's closet. Unexpectedly, Vermeil has a strict consistency when it comes to outfits. While brushing his teeth, he suddenly hears a knock on the door. He originally plans to ignore it, but the knocking only grows louder. Our protagonist begins to panic, wondering if the person outside is Vermeil's killer. He starts worrying and wonders if he locked the door. In the next second, the door is slammed open. Fearing for his life, our protagonist hides in a corner. Suddenly, the figure slips on the papers he previously scattered using his wind magic. Seeing this, our protagonist is left in shock. He approaches cautiously and is momentarily stunned when he realizes the girl has no pulse. He begins panicking, realizing a girl just entered his room and died. However, before he can gather his thoughts and decide what to do next, Moxie suddenly enters the room. Seeing this, our protagonist desperately tries to explain the situation, while Moxie silently observes him. Noah tried to explain his innocence, but Moxie focused entirely on the dead girl on the floor. She expressed admiration for the kill, referring to the body as it. Noah explained that the girl had simply tripped and fallen to her death. He stopped mid-sentence upon realizing she did not view the body as a human. She found his confusion funny, asking if he was a comedian. Noah grew anxious as he struggled to understand her sudden kindness. He demanded to know the identity of the dead girl. Moxie called him an idiot and opened a bottle of liquor. She revealed the truth. The figure was a face stealer, a monster that inhabits corpses. Noah stared at the creature in shock. When he asked a basic question, Moxie snapped at him, asking if he had ignored the official warning notes. A vague memory of a note surfaced in Noah's mind. Moxie questioned how Noah killed a face stealer without knowing what it was. He sheepishly admitted the creature slipped and killed itself. She labeled the act as lucky and made herself comfortable in the room. Noah asked if the monster had taken over a living person. Moxie confirmed it, but noted that the original host was likely an unimportant maid, as face stealers only inhabit dead bodies. Noah realized the danger of leaving any corpses behind. Moxie explained that face stealers are drawn to magic. They rarely use inside the buildings because magic can cause property damage. This explained why the creature targeted Noah. Moxie then requested that the incident remain a secret to protect her reputation. Noah agreed but set a condition for his silence. Moxie took offense, assuming Noah wanted something perverted. He clarified that he only needed answers because a head injury had caused memory loss. Moxie, though annoyed, granted him 10 minutes for questions. With her permission, our protagonist begins by asking why monsters are found within the academy, because the academy is supposed to be safe. In response, Moxie explains that the academy is safer, but not completely safe. She further explains that face stealers are a newer issue, but far from the worst they have faced. In addition, monsters want their runes just as much as they want theirs. Our protagonist then asks if she meant the energy they get after killing monsters. She agrees, saying it goes both ways. However, our protagonist comments on the way she said it earlier. It sounded as if they could take runes directly from monsters. Moxie explains that they can indeed take runes from monsters, but it has to be a master rune. During the talk, Moxie used vine magic to consume the monster's corpse. Noah was stunned by the display, but Moxie mocked his lack of basic knowledge. Noah again used the excuse of a head injury. But he is amazed by Moxie's vine magic. She completely absorbed the corpse using her magic, and he wonders if he could do the same. Seeing his expression, Moxie teases him playfully and tells him to ask his next question. Our protagonist thinks for a moment. He doesn't know if the huge rune he has in his soul is considered a master rune, so he asks if there are any monsters with master runes near the academy. In response, she certainly hopes not. Monsters with master runes vary in strength. The strongest ones can even destroy the entire academy. As for the one closest to the academy, she says it's the Hellreaver. But that one will definitely pound our protagonist into paste, because the monster is rank 2 and has a rank 3 rune, meaning our protagonist has no chance since he is only rank 1. After a brief moment of thought, our protagonist asks the next question. He asks why there is no information about making new runes. In response, Moxie tells him that if his family figures it out, she should be the first to know. Adding insultingly, she wonders how he could possibly think such a thing when everything he researches is in his grimoire, unless it's as worthless as him. Apparently, our protagonist didn't give much thought to it, deciding to check later. He asks if someone can learn a rune simply by studying the drawing. Hearing this, Moxie explains that a drawing without energy is just a drawing. Just as runes store energy, they need energy to exist. Our protagonist pictures this as jump-starting a car, but with the rune replacing the car. In simple words, runes require energy. In addition to this, Moxie explains that forming a rune within one's soul requires both the drawing and energy. In addition, rune combinations are guarded closely. Knowing the combination of runes without shattering one's soul is so valuable, which is why it is kept a secret. As for the last question, our protagonist asks the number of people that hate him. Moxie explains it would be easier to give the number of people that like him instead. Well, based on his reputation, it's normal to be hated by many. If that's the case, our protagonist has no more questions and promises to keep the matter of the face stealers between them. Their deal is sealed with a handshake. Before leaving, she mentions the upcoming exams. Noah pretended to understand but secretly added the exams to his list of problems. Moxie gave a final warning and slammed the door. The next day, our protagonist arrives at a massive tower used as a public transit system. He had overheard other professors talking about it, but this wasn't what he had imagined. He soon begins ascending the stairs, planning to use the information he gathers along the way to get stronger. However, he hadn't expected to climb all the way to the 30th floor. When he finally arrives, he is both exhausted and relieved. The old man handling the machine asks about his destination. Our protagonist hesitates, wondering if the machine is safe, and finally reveals that he's headed to the Scorched Acres. Out of curiosity, the old man asks why he keeps going to the forest, perhaps for research. Our protagonist nods. Hearing this, the old man assures him that the cannon will bring him back in 24 hours and reminds him of the warning he gave the previous month. Our protagonist realizes that ignoring that warning had caused him a concussion and, at the same time, cost Vermil his life. When he asks if the machine is safe, the old man proudly nods, saying he's never had any issues using it. He helps our protagonist inside and suggests they talk later, since there are other people waiting in line to use the cannon. Inside, our protagonist asks what to do next. The old man flashes a grin and tells him to squeeze. This makes our protagonist second-guess his choice. Meanwhile, the old man says this part is what he loves most. Bracing himself, our protagonist thinks that if he dies, he'll just come back to life. And just like that, he is shot out from the cannon like a cannonball. At the Linwick estate, Braden enters a dim room to speak with his father, who stands in the shadows. He reports about his task completion. In addition, Braden reports Vermil behaves oddly, but the father expresses no surprise, calling it an improvement over Vermil's usual unpleasant demeanor. Braden, whom I'm suspecting is Noah's brother, wonders if this means Vermil might be nearing completion of his mission. The father remains doubtful, coldly stating that Vermil will fulfill his purpose whether in life or death. Meanwhile, Noah soars through the air, surrounded by blue energy, heading toward the Scorched Acres. Just before impact, the energy vanishes, and he lands face first in the dirt. Frustrated, he mutters complaints about the cannon's lack of safety. Rising to his feet, he surveys the scorched terrain, which shows no changes since his last visit. Since the cannon will bring him back within 24 hours, he plans to use this time to hunt some monkeys and make them fear him. In addition, since the place is deserted, it is the perfect place to practice what he has learned. After struggling for a bit, he finally climbs a tree, relieved that no one is there to see his awkward climbing. Retrieving Vermil's grimoire, Noah hopes to find something interesting apart from his wind rune magic. After all, if he is going to fill his rune with energy, it has to be the right one. He flips through in search of something more compelling. Our protagonist is momentarily surprised because Vermal has collected nearly 100 runes. He dismisses the flame rune as too basic, rejects the plant rune due to a failed attempt at caring for a succulent in his previous life, and deems the shadow rune overly dramatic. He also rules out water, light, electricity, and metal. Our protagonist was looking for something unique. He needed a rune that could apply knowledge from Earth. However, it was not like he was a scientist who knew chemical reactions. He was simply a music teacher. This thought sparked an idea in his head. At last, he found it. A greater vibration rune at rank 1. Funny enough, the original Vermil thought it was useless and believed it only made things shake. Seeing this, our protagonist shook his head. If only he knew the true power of vibration. Noah explained that with enough vibration it could cause tremors and even quakes. This was exactly what he was looking for. With that settled, it was time to create the vibration rune. Doing so required a replacement. After brief contemplation, Noah decided to replace one wind rune since he had 6 of them. The ash rune was the strongest one he had, and its true usage still remained a mystery. He carefully dismantles one of the smaller wind runes. The rune shatters into fragments and fades slowly. Next comes the challenging part, the reconstruction of a better rune. With intense focus, he reshapes particles from the old rune into the new vibration rune. After some time, he finally creates the vibration rune. However, the rune holds only minimal energy. This means it is time to farm some monkeys. By relying solely on the wind rune to fill the vibration rune, our protagonist smirks in anticipation of getting payback. Spotting a monkey feasting on another monkey's corpse, our protagonist radiates killing intent. As it turns, he activates his wind rune and cleanly severs its head. Approaching the monkey, our protagonist discovers the monkey barely filled the rune. With a grim sense of humor, he hopes the monkeys are not endangered, because with this he plans to kill as many as possible. Perched in a tree, Noah scans the terrain for his next victim. A group of monkeys comes into view, one resembling the type responsible for his previous death. Leaving his gourd behind, he moves closer while wondering if the monster has intelligence since they appear to be communicating, but it does not matter. Since the monkeys killed him first, it is only natural for him to retaliate. Thinking this, he launches his attack, killing the smaller ones first. The largest monkey reacts in shock. Seeing this, our protagonist mockingly asks if those were its companions or perhaps its lunch and dinner. Enraged, the monkey lunges at him. Our protagonist responds by delivering multiple wind blasts. To his shock, the monkey is surprisingly agile, or perhaps it is a skill issue. Nonetheless, the monkey closes the distance and delivers a slash. But our protagonist dodges in time and follows with another attack, not giving it room to breathe. In response, our protagonist begins preparing a counterattack. In the end, the monkey kills him. His soul leaves his body as he explains that he predicted the attack but was not fast enough to react. This makes him realize that he needs more training. However, he is both shocked and irritated as the monkey begins feasting on his corpse. 12 hours later, he returns, fully aware that each death brings a splitting headache and temporarily blocks his magic. He notes the duration of the pain and prepares for another confrontation. The monkey shrieks and leaps. Anticipating its moves, he dodges the side slashes, leans away from the overhead strike, and counters the horizontal attack with precise wind rune magic, decapitating it instantly. Observing the fallen body, he concludes that all monkeys fight with predictable patterns, simplifying his task. Soon after, he returns to the transport cannon. The old man greets him, startled by his battered appearance. Exhaustion weighs heavily as Noah questions the method of travel. The concerned old man asks about his condition. Noah reassures him, admitting he forgets about the rapid return. The old man winks, suggesting heavy use of healing potions. Noah agrees and leaves, deciding to bring spare clothes next time. In the classroom, he waits for students who arrive late. Footsteps echo, and he notes they are earlier than the previous time. Todd and Isabel enter. Todd confidently claims he knows Noah will be present, while Isabel questions his certainty, referencing Noah's absence the day before. Todd dismisses her doubt and collects on a bet. Curious, Noah asks about the class schedule, wondering if he misses something during his trip to Scorched Acres. Isabel clarifies that class occurs every other day and has been scheduled for the previous one. Noah asks why they come, and Todd explains they often use the classroom as a hangout spot. Apologizing for the interruption, Noah proposes making up for the missed session, suggesting that learning together is worthwhile. Silence follows. Clearing his throat, he asks about their homework. Todd admits to stress eating instead of solving it, while Isabel confesses confusion despite her efforts. She requests the answer and Noah surprises them by admitting he doesn't know either. That is clearly unexpected. Regardless, he explains that the difficulty means it requires deeper thought, a process they have to undertake themselves. Isabel, frustrated, questions the point of thinking without an answer. Noah points out that the act of thinking itself holds value. Turning to the board, he introduces the day's main topic, the importance of good runes. He asks if the limit is 7 per level, and both students confirm. When he asks what happens upon advancing ranks, Todd explains the process of combining all 7 into a stronger rune, enabling absorption or fusion of more complex ones. Progression moves from general types like fire or wind to specialized ones like frozen mist and so on. Isabel warns that failed combinations can shatter runes, crippling the user until the soul heals, a process that can take years. She emphasizes that successful combinations require deep understanding, guidance, and intent. Noah reflects on the Vermeil family's likely impressive rune collection, but considers contacting them unwise. After 30 minutes, he wraps up the session, comparing runes to buckets, lesser ones being smaller, greater ones larger. When all 7 fill, they can merge into a more capable rune. Noah asks if that covers everything about runes, and Todd and Isabel agree with the analogy, but they remain silent. He assures them no answer is needed yet, and ends the class to avoid overwhelming them, promising to continue the discussion next time. At the same time, both students exchange looks. Isabel remarks on Noah's transformation, wondering how serious his head injury is. He dismisses the comment, stating he likes himself now. Todd agrees, noting Noah seems almost respectable. Noah considers that progress. Before they leave, he tries to confirm if the next class is in 2 days. Isabel confirms the time, addressing him formally. Noah thanks them and reminds them to be punctual, asserting that lateness is his thing and that he isn't finished with either of them. Later, as he exits the classroom, he clutches his head, exhaustion settling in. He wonders if repeated deaths cause such fatigue and wishes it was possible for consulting WebMD. 2 days later, he sits at his desk, lost in thought. Time remains before class begins, but the persistent headaches from magic use continue to plague him. He questions whether the strain stems from the magic itself or the creeping paranoia of knowing Vermeil's killer remains at large. As these thoughts churn, a shadowy figure appears in the window behind him. Startled, he spins around swiftly, yet nothing appears. Shaking off the eerie sensation, Noah refocuses. Determined to test the results of the previous day's training, he activates the vibration rune, hoping for progress. As his hand presses against the desk, it begins to tremble, items scatter, and he scrambles to catch them before they tumble. The effectiveness of the rune surprises him. Pleased yet intrigued, he turns his attention to the other runes. If vibration and wind respond well, then why does ash continue to resist? An idea sparks. Grabbing a candle and a sheet of paper, he lights the flame and watches the paper burn, reducing it to ash. Activating the ash rune, a grin spreads across his face. That is when he realizes why he can't use the ash runes. He can't create ash. The realization strikes, runes govern existing elements, not create them. He decides to experiment with the ash rune to compare its strength to the lesser runes. Noah attempts to direct the created ashes toward the candle, but nothing happens. Disappointment settles in. Ash, unlike wind, lacks cutting force. Contemplating the nature of runes, he deduces their strength hinges on the energy stored within. This clarifies Vermeil's preference for multiple weaker wind runes, easier to wield than building up to stronger ones. Thankfully, only one wind rune has been discarded. Otherwise, a reliable combat method might have been lost. Yet the massive purple rune before him remains a mystery. Uncertainty and hesitation grip Noah. Tampering with it seems reckless, especially without understanding its function. Still, curiosity gnaws at him. Floating closer, he reaches out and touches the rune. A flash erupts. Suddenly, the man who had battled renewal earlier appears. Approaching a centipede-like creature, he prepares for confrontation. The man faces its lunge, but he immediately follows up with a single strike, splitting it in two. Runes spill from the creature's body. Noah watches in awe as the man retrieves one labeled insectoid armor. Thoughts race. He hopes to memorize in order to replicate. The man, however, splits the rune into two, shattering it in the process. After it seems like he destroys the rune, on the contrary, he doesn't destroy it but rather splits it into different runes. Its function becomes clear. Sunder. It splits not only creatures but runes themselves. The revelation electrifies Noah. Unlike typical rune combinations, irreversible like baking a cake, Sunder allows separation and recovery of original components. Infinite testing becomes possible. Free from permanence, excitement surges, but time presses. He dashes from the room, postponing further exploration of Sunder. Strength needs to grow before wielding such power. If combinations unlock new magic, then Sunder is the master key. Noticing the open door, he reminds himself to lock it next time, recalling a past encounter with a face stealer. Arriving at the classroom, Isabel greets him with her usual bluntness. Noah responds politely, brushing off her remarks, claiming being late is part of his job. Todd chimes in, curious about the day's lesson. Imbuement, combinations, or perhaps the meaning of life. His guesses miss the mark. Noah shakes his head, amused, and suddenly proposes a field trip. Once outside, Todd looks incredulous. Isabel voices her irritation, questioning Noah's ability to teach when he lacks answers himself. With a smirk, Noah clarifies, he won't be instructing today. Both students will spar against each other. Todd rolls his eyes, suspecting another one of his excuses. Isabel seizes the moment to taunt Todd, accusing him of fear of losing to her again. Todd fires back, reminding her of their previous tie. Isabel coolly replies that tying again should be easy. Their banter continues, and Noah watches with satisfaction, encouraging their competitive spirit. At the training grounds, preparations begin. Each student wears a shield badge, designed to block magical attacks, though it only functions within the grounds. Todd, brimming with confidence, asks Isabel if she can handle his flame magic. She smirks, mockingly noting that the only thing he can burn is their dinner. Todd retorts with a weak jab, which Isabel dismisses, urging him to save his banter for when Vermil isn't around. Annoyed, Todd pushes to begin. From the sidelines, Noah observes Todd. Cleverly, Todd bypasses his fire rune's limitations. Meanwhile, Isabel activates her rune, literally looking like Raiden's Shogun from Genshin Impact, and an energy sword emerges from her chest. A plasma sword, Noah marvels at the unfamiliar magic. Both wield power without displaying their runes, prompting Noah to wonder if he can do the same. Todd charges, his strikes wild yet strong. Isabel blocks and shoves him back. Concern creeps in as the fight intensifies. Isabel taunts Todd, praising his strength but criticizing his lack of precision. Determined, Todd prepares to launch fireballs. Isabel dodges most, narrowly escaping one. Another forces her to block, sending her sword flying. Noah assumes the match is over. But Isabel surges forward. Confusion grips Noah. He wonders why she continues. Todd senses danger, curses, and braces himself. Isabel sees an opening and conjures another sword, catching Noah off guard. Todd blocks the strike, but the impact lights up his shield badge and suddenly creates a protective barrier. Her eyes burn with intensity, and the shield cracks under pressure. Frustrated, Todd collapses as the shield shatters. Isabel stands over him, challenging his claim of a tie. Todd expresses disdain for her magic. He wants to make an excuse for his loss but falters. Insisting he nearly won, he points to her dropped sword. Isabel counters that it had been intentional. Todd remains skeptical. Just as their argument is about to escalate, each disputing the other's claim, Noah clears his throat, breaking the tension. Both snap at him, demanding his purpose. Applauding their performance, Noah admits surprise. Based on their remarks about Vermil's teachings, he had doubted their magical abilities. Concerns about their readiness for the exam now seem misplaced. Todd hesitates, trying to inquire about the exam. Isabel interrupts, demanding clarity. She asks if Noah is truly going to make them take it. Noah questions their resistance, asking how they plan to pass without it. Isabel's frustration boils over. She reminds him of their prior agreement, emphasizing that proper instruction had only begun a week ago. She explains that an agreement had been made promising them a free pass if they brought what Noah demanded. Realization strikes Noah as the depth of Vermil's corruption becomes clear, and he silently curses the man for arranging such a deal. He informs them that circumstances have shifted, and the exam will be mandatory after all. Panic grips Todd and Isabel at the thought of facing death during the test, and they voice their protest. Noah requests a reminder of what the exam entails. Todd looks stunned at the question, while Isabel clarifies that it requires killing a slasher, a swift and vicious predator that can shred them apart if caution fails. Noah absorbs the information yet brushes it aside, remarking that their sparring sessions have already prepared them. Slashers, though fast, act in predictable patterns. Isabel, unconvinced, snaps back that such words are easy for Noah, since he will not be the one fighting. Todd follows with skepticism, accusing Noah of cheating through his own exam, just as they had attempted now. In response, Noah reveals his history of killing many slashers alone. Both students falter at the revelation, though Todd clings to doubt while Isabel sarcastically suggests that any slasher Noah faced must have been restrained by his powerful family. Within himself, Noah mourns the lack of respect from his pupils, yet resolves to prove his worth regardless, unwilling to let them suffer as Vermil had allowed. He then declares his decision. The next weeks will be dedicated to training. If by the time of the exam they still lack confidence, he will permit them to cheat without any bribes. The announcement shocks both students, more so when Isabel quickly agrees, surprising Todd. When he questions her choice, Isabel explains that there is no alternative. Strength can only be gained through effort, and survival demands abandoning reliance on cheating. She also slips further, revealing a darker intention. Noah catches the words and wonders if he heard correctly, but Isabel presses forward with an ultimatum. He has until the exam to prove himself, or they will walk away. She warns him against self-satisfaction, insisting that he remains a terrible professor. To her surprise, Noah agrees with the judgment. Hours later, Noah ventures into the scorched acres, cutting down slashers with ease. 3 have already fallen to him as he grows accustomed to wielding his magic without physically inscribing his runes. The act of visualizing them in his mind proves enough, a convenience he relishes. Each slasher dies once their movements become familiar. Their patterns remove the element of surprise. He even muses about a mythical drill sergeant monkey instructing them to fight identically. His musings end when a rock strikes his head, launching him backward. The impact slams his body against the ground. From the shadows, a monkey creeps out with predatory hunger, licking his prone form before starting to feed. Noah's hand, now detached in spirit form, rises from the corpse. His spirit cracks, his form writhing in agony. Screams tear from him as pain surges, confusion twisting his thoughts. Death should have ended sensation, yet torment persists. The scene cuts abruptly to the following morning. Our boy yanks his curtains closed because of the birds outside, silently complaining about how badly his head hurts. It feels as if thousands of nails are piercing his skull. However, the birds continue chirping, and fed up, he screams in anger, only to be hit by the bright morning sunlight. Later, while washing up, our protagonist reflects on his current situation. He admits he was cocky just because he had infinite lives and could predict the monkey's moves. While this benefited him, that isn't the case for Isabel and Todd. They don't have the same luxury he has, so now he needs to think of a way to handle the situation. In addition, he needs to find his killer. The situation keeps getting worse to the point that Noah wishes he had been reincarnated as a slime, but that's when he notices a slasher's reflection in his mirror. Our protagonist responds immediately using wind magic, only to strike nothing. Because of this, he begins to wonder if he is going insane or perhaps just being too paranoid. Dismissing the thought, he decides to grab a drink. After taking a glass of liquor, he shifts his focus to his main objective. Grabbing a paper, he writes down his priorities. The first is curing his headache, and the last is finding the person who wants him dead. It really amuses him that he prioritizes the killer last. Regardless, he decides to focus on the headache, recalling the pain he felt when he died at the hands of the chucker, something he had never experienced before. Thinking about this, Noah enters his soul to observe. Within his soul, large cracks can be seen. However, to Noah's relief, the cracks are slowly closing, practically healing by themselves. Seeing this, he realizes the pain he felt during his death was damage to his soul. In other words, if he minimizes the number of times he dies, things should return to normal. He also estimates that the healing process will take a couple of weeks. With the solution to his headache in mind, he moves to his next objective. Looking at the vibration rune, he can tell it is powerful, but not yet complete. Regardless, he is making decent progress. Now, all that is left on his list is training his students for the upcoming exams. To do this, our protagonist informs them to practice by dueling each other. At the same time, he plans to revisit the forest to find a way to avoid the chucker. By doing this, he successfully maps out the safer areas within the scorched arses. However, this comes at the cost of several deaths, which also increases his headaches. The story skips to a week later. Our protagonist enters his classroom with a dramatic pose before apologizing for coming late again. However, Isabel and Todd are not surprised. Isabel even comments that she hopes he realizes this was a bad idea and drops it. Leaning on the doorframe, our protagonist shakes his head, insisting this will be the best experience of their lives. Because of this, Todd wonders aloud about his sudden interest in training them. This wasn't the Vermal they knew. Hearing this, our protagonist remembers his students. The truth is, he never saw them succeed with his own eyes, and this time, he wasn't going to lose that opportunity. Meanwhile, Isabel and Todd stare at him, wondering if he was even listening. Seeing this, our protagonist smiles and says he just loves doing his job. The next scene takes us to the public transit center. Our protagonist arrives with his students and requests that the old man send them to the scorched RCs. The old man responds warmly. After seeing Isabel and Todd, he asks if they are going on a field trip. He doesn't consider it a bad idea after hearing our protagonist's plan to train them in preparation for the upcoming exams. Our protagonist hurries Todd along, but the poor guy looks like he's about to throw up. Isabel immediately warns that if he does, she will stab him. Seeing Todd's expression, Isabel wonders aloud how our protagonist managed to talk them into this. In response, Noah attributes it to their drive for learning and self-growth that inspired them to take risks, to which Isabel interprets it as him blackmailing them. Our protagonist replies dismissively. With everything set, our protagonist gives the green light, and the old man fires the cannon, sending them to their destination. In the next scene, they finally arrive at the forest for their first field lesson. Our protagonist immediately tells Isabel to go first, reminding her how she was bragging earlier about winning fights. Isabel steps forward reluctantly, clearly irritated, realizing she has no choice but to give it everything she has if she doesn't want to stay stuck in this place forever. With a serious expression, Isabel looks at the creature sleeping on the tree branch and dismisses it as nothing more than a stupid monkey. Meanwhile, our protagonist and Todd stand at the base of the tree as Isabel prepares to attack. Our protagonist watches carefully. He believes she should be able to kill it easily, but just in case, his hand begins glowing with blue energy. The moment Isabel lunges forward with her shining blade, the monkey's eye suddenly snaps open. It lets out a sharp screech and effortlessly dodges her strike. Isabel freezes in shock. She completely missed. The creature immediately retaliates, screaming as it leaps straight toward her. Before it can land the attack, with a single clean slice, our protagonist kills the creature. He then calmly praises Isabel, saying she made a decent attempt. Looking down at the dead monster, he advises her to actually try next time, instead of simply reacting to the monkey's movements. Isabel explodes in anger, shouting that the creature almost killed her. But our protagonist lectures her. He says her struggle comes from a lack of confidence. If she fought the same way she does in the arena, she wouldn't have any problems. Watching this, Todd mutters that it's easy for their professor to talk about confidence. After all, they can't afford protective shields like the rich kids. Our protagonist blinks in confusion before realizing Todd thinks he owns a shield. He asks them if they really believe he has some fancy protective item. Isabel crosses her arms and bluntly says he's obviously a Linwick. Todd nods in agreement. In response, the protagonist suddenly removes his coat. Then he takes off his shirt, revealing he has no shield at all. He stands there shirtless in the middle of the forest, shocking both students. Todd foolishly suggests maybe the shield is hidden in his pants. Isabel quickly warns him not to take those off. The group stares at him in disbelief, calling him even dumber than they thought for entering such a dangerous place unprotected. Isabel demands to know why a rank 1 like him would come here without a shield. What if a monkey tried to kill him? In response, our protagonist calmly points out the main issue. Todd, completely confused, yells that a shield would at least give them a chance to survive or time to escape. The protagonist simply smiles, unfazed by their panic. At this point, Isabel and Todd start thinking their professor might have lost his mind. Suddenly, a terrifying howl tears through the forest, instantly silencing their argument. Isabel and Todd begin trembling as they realize a slasher is nearby. Todd is convinced they're all about to die. But our protagonist calmly remarks that the timing is perfect for their first real lesson. The slasher appears, its red eyes glowing in the shadows. Telling his students to watch closely, our protagonist gathers swirling blue energy into his hand. He boldly walks forward to face the towering beast and warns them that this encounter will be part of the exam. The slasher charges. It swings its claws at him, but he easily avoids the lethal swipe. While dodging, he explains that slashers, like everything else in this forest, attack in predictable patterns. In simple terms, if you can predict them, you can defeat them. And just like that, he kills the slasher effortlessly, as if it were nothing. Isabel and Todd stand in stunned silence. They can't believe their professor just killed a slasher so easily. He casually walks back and tells them a shield isn't necessary if they simply avoid getting hit. Todd immediately gets excited and asks if he can go next. Isabel, determined to redeem herself, prepares as well. Now the protagonist begins properly guiding them. He tells them not to rely purely on instinct, but to recognize patterns in their enemy's movements. Following his advice, Todd successfully summons a stream of fire and strikes a leaping monkey. He blasts straight through its chest, finally learning how to properly read his opponent. Inspired, Isabel charges her blade and delivers a clean, precise killing strike on another target. At that moment, they realize they don't actually need shields anymore. They begin celebrating, laughing, as they admit the monkeys never stood a chance once they understood their attack patterns. Seeing their growth, our protagonist feels proud. If they continue improving like this, they'll become much stronger long before they can even afford shields. Todd agrees, saying with this new skill he'll spend his money on healing potions instead. That mention of money suddenly makes Isabel curious. She asks their professor what he spends his money on. The question catches him off guard, triggering a memory. He begins suspecting whether Braden and his family were involved in killing the original vermin. Todd then playfully pats him on the back, joking that their professor probably spends all his money on healing potions, since only someone with a death wish would fight a slasher without a shield. The professor clarifies that he doesn't have a death wish, but he also doesn't fear death. The students struggle to understand that mindset. He explains that fear keeps people safe, but it also holds them back from taking risks. As he walks ahead, he says he understands death rather than fears it. In simple words, they shouldn't let the fear of dying control their growth. In the middle of their conversation, Todd suddenly notices something disturbing in the distance and asks what it is. Our protagonist turns back, confused at first, then his expression shifts into pure shock. They aren't deep enough in the forest for something like this to appear. From the trees emerges a chucker. The beast roars loudly, and our protagonist realizes a monster of this level should not be in this area. Sensing extreme danger, he immediately orders Isabel and Todd to run and not look back, no matter what they hear. As they flee, Isabel worries about his safety, but Todd urges her to keep moving so they don't get in their professor's way. The chucker grabs a massive rock, preparing to attack, while our protagonist stands his ground. He knows that if he dies now, he won't have enough magic to kill this beast. Still, he reassures his fleeing students that he'll be fine. The chucker suddenly hurls the giant rock. Our protagonist's eyes widen. The attack isn't aimed at him. The projectile is flying straight toward Isabel and Todd. If he doesn't act immediately, they will die. Without hesitation, he leaps directly into the path of the rock. Watching this, his students scream out his name. Todd desperately holds back a panicked Isabel, as Noah is sent flying, and crashes violently into a tree, blood spilling from his mouth. Noah wheezes, coughing up even more blood as his body struggles after taking the direct hit. Isabel fights against Todd's grip, determined to run to her fallen teacher. The moment she breaks free and starts sprinting toward Noah's motionless body, his voice stops her. Noah forces himself back up, his gaze dark and intense, reminding them that he told them to run. Seeing this, Todd immediately grabs Isabel's hand and pulls her away as they flee. Noah turns and walks back toward the chucker. He vows that he won't allow the beast to reach his students, even if he loses his magic upon reviving. Because of that, he resolves to kill it, no matter how many times he has to die and come back. The chucker hurls another massive stone toward him. Noah responds by slicing it clean in half, using wind magic. He realizes that although he has multiple lives, this might be his only real chance to defeat the monster. But there's a problem. The chucker has never allowed him to get close. And unlike the creature, his aim isn't nearly as precise. When the monster launches another projectile, Noah barely dodges it, frustration building. In response, he slams his glowing hand into the cracked earth. A massive rumble erupts, shaking the entire forest. The ground continues to quake violently, making Isabel and Todd wonder if an earthquake has started. Still running through the trembling forest, they pray their teacher survives. Meanwhile, Noah realizes he's found the perfect way to fight the chucker. The monster roars loudly. But to Noah, it no longer matters. He's already seen enough of its movements. Using the surrounding ash as a medium, he begins shaping his next attack. As the chucker struggles to shake off the ash cloud, Noah grins. He finally understands why they encountered this monster. He had mastered the slasher's behavior and patterns, yet the chucker never made sense. Standing within the drifting ash, he realizes something must be controlling it. Perhaps it was sent here somewhere it didn't belong. The chucker suddenly begins slamming its fists into the ground. Noah mocks the effort and fires a wind blade. But to his shock, the chucker dodges it from a blind spot. It retaliates by launching multiple chunks of rock. The attack strikes Noah like a barrage of gunshots. He collapses to the ground. Trying to understand how the creature avoided his strike, he attempts to use wind magic again. But his wind mana is gone. Now he can only hope he bought enough time for his students to escape. Suddenly, the chucker grabs him by the neck and lifts him off the ground. And then it speaks. Hearing its voice and finally seeing its face up close, Noah recognizes it immediately. The creature taunts him, saying it hopes he doesn't come back once it kills him. It believes this is the end. What it doesn't know is that Noah still has just enough mana left for one final attack. Using his ash rune, he creates a storm of piercing spikes. Both of them are caught in the metallic tempest. The chucker's body is repeatedly impaled as blood splashes across the dirt. As the dust settles, Noah wonders if the voice he heard belonged to the Hellweaver. Our protagonist managed to kill the chucker, but it cost him one life. Groaning in exhaustion and holding his head, his first concern becomes finding Todd and Isabel. As he moves forward, he finds the extra blue clothes he hid during earlier training. He quickly changes into them, noticing his original clothes were completely destroyed in the fight. Now dressed, he walks through the twisted, eerie forest, breathing heavily while searching for his students. Tired, he leans against a tree, feeling relieved that they followed his order and ran away. He quietly hopes no one saw him die and come back to life. Feeling drained and helpless, he falls to the ground, trusting his students can survive until the transport cannon brings them back. For now, he closes his eyes and rests, giving in to his exhaustion. Moments later, a bright blue beam shoots into the sky. Back in the city, Isabel stares in shock, amazed that the professor survived. Todd wonders how he survived being crushed by a rock without a shield. Sweating nervously, he quickly says it was pure luck and many healing potions. As they walk down the stairs, Isabel realizes this is why they were told to buy potions, while Todd casually wonders if potions can fix torn clothes too. Trying to avoid suspicion, the tired professor asks how they escaped. Todd says they followed his orders and ran, but a monkey chased them. Striking a dramatic pose, Todd proudly says he defeated it easily. Everyone stares at him in awkward silence. Ignoring the awkward moment, the professor forces a weak smile and changes the topic. Holding his aching head, he suddenly gives them 2 days off, leaving Todd confused. As he walks away weakly, Isabel shows real concern for Professor Vermil. Todd agrees, grateful that the professor saved their lives. Later, in the busy city plaza, Vermil stumbles forward in pain. Feeling completely drained, he realizes he must find a cure for his worsening headaches. He grimly realizes that his inability to die could become a curse if enemies discover how helpless he is after reviving. However, Vermil knows this isn't his biggest problem. Exhausted and disturbed, he realizes his hallucinations get worse every time he dies. Now he begins seeing people as slashers. Lost in thought, he bumps into someone. When the person calls out, Vermil looks up and mistakes him for a chucker. His eyes widen in panic, and he throws a powerful punch. The illusion breaks instantly, revealing he attacked a human student, whose shield cracks badly. The student is sent flying from the impact. Bystanders watch in shock, shouting that the professor attacked a student without reason. Staring at his shaking hand, Vermil realizes in horror that he attacked an innocent person. The student's golden shield artifact flickers weakly, barely surviving the attack. The muscular student groans in anger, demanding to know why he was attacked and how his shield broke from one punch. As the crowd whispers, Vermil nervously says he doesn't know, while the angry student prepares to fight back. Suddenly, a stern voice interrupts, disappointed that the student's shield broke after only 1 hour. An older man with scars approaches, giving off a powerful presence. The student points at Vermil and accuses him of trying to kill him, making Vermil panic inside. Looking down in disgust, Silvertide calls the behavior foolish. Both Vermil and the student panic secretly. Vermil fears being fired or arrested, while the student fears punishment. Silvertide stares at Vermil and says he is clearly an experienced soldier, shocking the student. He explains that monster hunters rely on deadly instincts, and the student is lucky to be alive. Confused, Vermil points to himself and nervously says he isn't a soldier. Silvertide steps closer and asks his real profession. Vermil awkwardly introduces himself as a professor. Silvertide accepts this, then orders his student to apologize. The student bows immediately, returns Vermil's briefcase, and apologizes loudly. Completely confused, Vermil questions the strange situation. Suddenly, sharp pain strikes his head again. Holding his head, he apologizes for breaking the shield and quickly leaves, while Silvertide watches calmly. As Vermil disappears into the crowd, Silvertide notes that he is very interesting. Back in his room, Vermil collapses against the door in despair, afraid his mind is breaking, entering his soul state. He sees the same cracks again and becomes determined to find a cure. He searches his mind for answers. Suddenly, he freezes in fear as he sees something monstrous. He recognizes it immediately. He realizes this creature is the cause of his soul damage and hallucinations. His thoughts are interrupted by loud knocking on his door. Outside, Richard demands to speak with him, while the exhausted Vermil remains silent, sitting on the other side of the door. Vermil opens the door with a strained smile and nervously greets Richard. Internally, Vermil curses the unexpected visit and wonders what the man could possibly want. Richard pushes the door slightly wider and explains that he has been sent to investigate Vermil's recent odd behavior. He mentions crossing paths with Professor Silvertide, an encounter Vermil quickly confirms. Looming closer, Richard casually asks whether another check on Vermil's psyche is necessary. He remarks that assaulting students is an exceptionally poor choice. Vermil nervously forces a chuckle, waves the incident off as a simple misunderstanding, and insists his health is perfectly fine. Richard glares sharply and warns Vermil to stay under the radar to avoid drawing his father's bothersome attention. Vermil feigns a cheerful and dismissive goodbye while secretly questioning the sudden mention of his father. As Vermil steps back inside to shut the door, Richard suddenly orders him to stop. Richard provides a small sack of coin and explains that the school requested he deliver Vermil's uncollected wages from the previous month. Vermil is momentarily surprised. Recovering from the mild shock, he quietly expresses his gratitude. Richard walks away down the dim stone corridor, sharply refuses to be an errand boy again, and instructs Vermil to tell his paranoid father that he has no intention of prying into our boy's mind. Vermil stares blankly at the jingling pouch and debates whether those parting words were meant as a warning or a direct threat. Brushing the strange encounter aside, Vermil's expression grows serious as he immediately begins calculating how much a certain item might cost him. Several days later, Isabel and Todd wait in an empty classroom. Isabel appears slightly bored by the restless noise. Breaking the silence, Isabel wonders if their teacher will actually show up, startling Todd in the process. Meanwhile, high outside the academy tower, Vermil streaks rapidly through the sky while riding atop a massive sword. He steps heavily onto the damaged tile roof and shouts down to get their attention. Inside the classroom, the two students flinch in surprise and look up, startled by the sudden voice from above. Teetering precariously on the edge of the crumbling roof, Vermil enthusiastically announces his descent. He plummets into the room with a massive, explosive crash, sending a huge cloud of dust into the air. Coughing through the thick smoke, the panicked students check if Vermil is okay, and point out that there was definitely a safer way to enter the room. Vermil emerges from the debris with a wide, confident grin and cheerfully admits he is still learning to pilot it but is having a blast. Sweating in utter disbelief, Todd deadpans that Vermil's new ride is the absolute cheapest-looking flying sword he has ever laid eyes on. Todd hands Vermil a large bouquet of orange roses topped with a white envelope. Vermil naturally asks what the unexpected gift is for. Holding the heavy bouquet, Vermil listens as Isabel explains it is a gesture of gratitude for saving them. A closer look reveals the sealed envelope contains a heartfelt note from Isabel thanking Professor Vermil for saving their lives, accompanied by Todd's messy doodle praising the teacher's combat skills. Vermil is moved by his students' sincerity. Their actions make him remember his previous life and the time he spent with his students. Shifting focus, Vermil reveals that he also prepared a surprise for the students. He mentions their past struggles with lacking the resources of a noble house. Vermil presents his grimoire, stating that they now possess the resources they need. Recognizing the book as Vermil's personal grimoire filled with restricted Linwick family runes, Todd panics while Isabel hopes it is not a cruel joke. Smiling, Vermil assures them it is a sincere promise to do everything in his power to aid their growth. Isabel urgently warns that his noble family will kill him for sharing their secrets, but Todd is already lost in excitement at the prospect of finally learning greater runes. Vermil shrugs casually and dismisses the grave threat, reasoning that his family's ignorance will keep him completely safe. Furthermore, he instructs them to replace one of their lesser runes with a greater one by the next class, prompting Todd to leap high into the air with immense joy. Meanwhile, Isabel asks why Vermil continually risks so much for them. He simply compares his gift to a teacher providing a student with a basic shield. Isabel points out that families usually pay for such equipment, but Vermil waves off her concern as mere semantics. Stating he has an appointment, Vermil plants the massive sword into the ground and instructs them to return the grimoire to his desk when they finish studying. Taking flight on the giant weapon, Vermil bids them farewell and adds that if anyone asks, he simply forgot the book by accident. The two students look up while Todd expresses gratitude. Vermil shouts his departure and aims to fly through the ceiling but ends up crashing through the window instead. Watching him disappear, Todd notes his unique character while Isabel comments that his reckless flying might kill him before his noble family does. The scene shifts to Building A grand, red-roofed tower within the academy. Inside the stone hallways, Moxie appears carrying a heavy stack of books. She freezes the moment she spots something unexpected inside. Sitting casually near the back of the lecture hall, Vermil smiles and states he is simply there to observe her teaching. With a vein popping on her forehead, the deeply irritated Moxie bluntly demands a reason. Gesturing from his desk, Vermil explains he wants to learn, admitting he has slacked off for too long and needs to gather proper materials for his own students. Scoffing at his presence, Moxie drops her books onto the front desk and remarks that the rumors of his insanity are severely understated, but she reluctantly allows him to stay on the condition of absolute silence. With the terms set, heavy boots tap against the stone floor as Moxie steps up to prepare her lesson. Moxie instructs her silver-haired student Emily to take her seat and ignore their unexpected guest. As Emily sits and asks if they will practice rune work, Vermil internally wonders if she is the instructor's only student. Moxie crosses her arms and declines, stating they must review Emily's poor written exam, because her bad grade reflects poorly on her duty to the Torrens family. Resting her chin on her hand, Emily lets out a heavy sigh and complains that the test material was simply too boring. Moxie emphasizes that the material is crucial for understanding others and carrying oneself as a proper noble, a status that Vermil silently notes with interest. When Emily casually brushes off the lecture, the frustrated Moxie points out that the girl wrote only a single sentence for a full essay question. Worse still, the second question was completely blank. Emily defends leaving the next question about rune combinations completely blank by claiming she can just ask her grandmother whenever she needs new ones. Veins popping in anger, Moxie reprimands her for failing a guaranteed freebie question by missing one of the 4 great families. Unfazed, Emily calmly counts on her fingers, listing the King, Heron, and Torren families as her correct answers. Moxie furiously shouts that despite being incredibly distasteful, the Linwicks are still a great family, causing Vermil to sweat awkwardly at the insult. Emily stubbornly declares the Linwicks are enemies, but her teacher insists that makes knowing them even more critical for fulfilling her noble duties. Sitting quietly in the back, Vermil pieces together that an entire family holds a deep grudge against the Linwicks, leading him to deduce that the original owner of his body was not the only terrible person in his bloodline. Observing the apathetic student, Vermil internally notes that she lacks the fierce drive of his own pupils. Her utter indifference only solidifies his risky choice to share the forbidden Linwick runes with his eager class. Imagining his students joyfully mastering their new runes brings a proud smile to Vermil's face, as he firmly believes they deserve the opportunity. After the class, while gathering her heavy books, Moxie sharply asks Vermil why he is still lingering in the room. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, Vermil replies that he was merely thinking and thanks her for the enlightening lecture. When she questions his sudden gratitude, Vermil internally curses his lack of basic noble knowledge, but quickly saves face by claiming he appreciated a different perspective, which Moxie accepts. Walking toward the exit, Moxie glances back with a small smile and admits she may have been wrong to call him completely insane earlier. Vermil listens quietly as she suggests that improved might be a far more accurate description of his recent behavior. Watching her departing figure, Vermil realizes his opinion of his harsh colleague is starting to change. He internally confesses that he actually respects her straightforward attitude. Stepping out into the hallway, Vermil's peaceful stroll is abruptly cut short when he violently collides with a pompadour-haired man, prompting immediate, furious yelling from the stranger. Vermil apologizes. The man with a mustache coldly dismisses the apology. He orders his companion to ignore the professor, harshly referring to him as an unavoidable embarrassment. Vermil blinks in stark realization as the insulting words sink in. Watching the two men disappear down the corridor, Vermil deduces that the deeply personal insult means they must have personally known the original Vermil. This serves as a wake-up call. He needs to find out more about the Vermil family and the people connected to him before he ends up in a casket. In the next chapter, the scene shifts to the forest. Isabel and Todd resume their training, and they are finally strong enough to take on a slasher. With their combined effort, they easily take one down. Isabel finishes it off by delivering the final cut. Watching from above is Vermil, who compliments their performance and comments on their incredible improvement. In his mind, Vermil reflects that he hasn't died for some time, allowing his soul to heal gradually. As a result, the hallucinations have lessened. However, he remains concerned about the Hell Reaver. Even if it appears, he believes he can handle it and will not let anything happen to his students. Todd, brimming with excitement, asks if Vermil saw his flame attack. He thanks Vermil for helping him acquire a greater rune. Vermil acknowledges this but suggests they continue training if the two still have energy left in their runes. When they both agree, Vermil surfs on his flying sword, gesturing toward a direction while saying there are more slashers to kill. After the training session, they finally return. The old man excitedly asks about their journey, playfully inquiring if they taught the monkeys a good lesson. Vermil nods proudly and adds that his students sure did. Hearing this, the old man advises them to keep up the momentum, saying that with time they might even defeat a Hell Reaver and get to keep its master rune. That statement catches Vermil's attention. Meanwhile, Todd proudly declares that he will be the one to kill the Hell Reaver. In his thoughts, Vermil recalls a conversation he had with Moxie in his room about the Hell Reaver. Because of this, Vermil wonders if the Hell Reaver's master rune allows it to control beasts in the forest. Regardless, he departs telling his students to keep grinding until their next class. As he leaves, Todd notices something off with Isabel's expression. He asks if she is okay. She tells him she is fine. When he presses her about it, she angrily insists that she said she was fine. The poor guy is left behind as she heads toward the library. The scene cuts abruptly to the academy library. Isabel stands in the family lineage section, holding a book about the Linwicks. She thinks about Todd, her family, and the nobles. In her mind, she reveals that she once believed it was impossible to ever grow stronger, but now her dream seems to be coming true. Yet she wonders why it had to be Vermil, a Linwick, of all people who made it possible. Speaking of Vermil, he is also in the library. He initially came to find information about the Linwicks, so he could know who to engage with and who to avoid in the future. But he faces a problem. No librarian is present, so he cannot find anything. He decides to come back the next day. However, a familiar voice suddenly interrupts his thoughts. Vermil is taken aback, wondering why someone would raise their voice inside a library. The next moment, his expression freezes. He sees the guy with the pompadour haircut shoving Isabel while calling her a peasant. He curses her father and even dares her to act. That is when Vermil steps in. The guy is momentarily surprised to see Vermil. However, Vermil is furious and demands that the guy leave his student alone. This only makes the guy act more arrogant, and he begins stepping on her. Seeing this, Vermil strikes with his wind magic, but the guy's barrier activates and protects him. Because of this, the boy begins to mock Vermil, calling him pathetic for being a rank 1 and wondering how he ever became a professor. He continues laughing and asks if Vermil thinks he can break his shield. Isabel tries to tell Vermil that she is fine and that he shouldn't get involved. Vermil responds that now is not the time, because the guy dared to lay his hand on his student. It is his duty to beat some sense into him. Simply put, He is doing his job as an instructor. Hearing this, the guy only laughs more. However, the next second Vermil punches him, shattering his proud shield in the process. The guy, now bleeding, is shocked. He demands to know how this is even possible and asks if Vermil knows who he is messing with. Vermil stops him right then, saying he does not know him and that he is going to attribute this incident as a misunderstanding. He warns that if the guy dares to tell on him, the next time will not be just a misunderstanding. Now Vermil tells him that this is the part where he is supposed to run. With the guy dealt with, Vermil turns his attention to Isabel. When Isabel asks if he is crazy, Vermil replies that he was simply disciplining the guy as a lesson. Isabel smiles upon hearing this. She can't believe he actually punched a family member for her sake. Vermil does not hear that last part. When he does catch it, his reaction is obvious. Isabel is shocked to realize that he was not joking when he said he did not know the guy. Apparently, the one he just taught a lesson is Edward Linwick, the only student from the family's main branch. Meanwhile, Edward decides to report Vermil to Magnus Allen to teach him a lesson. Isabel angrily demands to know how Vermil can remain so calm after assaulting his own family member, reminding him that the Linwicks are notoriously unforgiving. Shrugging nonchalantly, Vermil defends his actions by claiming ignorance of his target's identity and stating he was merely fulfilling a request to teach the guy a lesson. Unimpressed, Isabel gives him a deadpan stare and points out the complete absurdity of his excuse. Brushing off her warnings, Vermil admits his real concern is the lost lineage book and asks if a duplicate exists. Isabel quickly shuts down the idea, clarifying that multiple copies of a lineage text would never be found outside the main estate. Because of this, Vermil shifts the topic by asking why Isabel was researching his family in the first place. In response, Isabel explains her need to identify Linwick students before the upcoming exams, as many noble houses attend to watch. Vermil closely observes the sudden, dark intensity in her eyes, silently realizing her interest in his family stems from something far deeper than mere curiosity. Changing the subject, Vermil suggests they leave before anyone comes searching for them. Making their way down the grand library steps, Vermil wonders aloud about the empty halls, prompting Isabel to explain that the other students are currently busy flattering nobles to secure retainer positions and rune access. Vermil casually asks why Isabel is not joining the others, only to be met with a sudden, awkward tension when Isabel bluntly reveals her family is blacklisted. Soon they discover where all the students are. While peeking cautiously around a stone pillar, Vermil asks if Isabel has a safe place to lay low until the fallout from his recent assault blows over. Exasperated by his lack of self-awareness, Isabel snaps that he needs to worry about his own safety since he is the actual culprit. Vermil confidently assures her that he can handle himself. He observes the lively, tent-filled scene, wondering if the mingling crowds are entirely comprised of noble houses. He internally agrees with Isabel's advice to lay low, knowing he must avoid crossing paths with more family members to prevent arousing any suspicion. Gesturing for her to leave, Vermil reminds her to be on time for class tomorrow, prompting Isabel to quickly fire back that he is typically the late one. Before leaving, Vermil calls after her to report back if she recovers the missing book, which Isabel acknowledges without looking back. Meanwhile, Vermil mentally apologizes to Isabel, believing her absence is safest if his family is nearby, and begins to suspect his relatives might be tied to a dark past incident involving his father. Because of this, Vermil realizes he must uncover this hidden history to properly protect his students, all while worrying about the severe potential fallout from his recent altercation with Edward. Realizing the library can offer no further answers, Vermil concludes there is only one option left and hopes his target is home. Vermil flashes a strained, nervous smile as Moxie threatens to report him for harassment, before she demands to know what he wants. The moment Vermil admits to mistakenly punching a Linwick youth, Moxie's annoyance vanishes, and she sharply stares at him. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Moxie immediately orders him inside, leaving Vermil surprised but eager to comply. Stepping into her apartment, Vermil thanks her while glancing around at the lush, vibrant plant life, silently noting that her space is far more heavily decorated than his own. Moxie asks Vermil if he is done inspecting her apartment. In response, Vermil says he is not done, and he teases her by pointing out the conspicuous lack of scattered papers on the floor meant to deter face stealers. Moxie immediately understands what he means and feels amused. Moxie quickly changes the subject, reminding him of their agreement to forget that incident and urging him to explain exactly how much trouble he is currently in. Dropping into an exaggerated stance, Vermil explains that Edward was harassing his student and dared him to intervene when told to stop, and he only obliged to the request. Frustrated by his overly brief summary, Moxie explodes in anger and demands actual details and the victim's name. The moment Edward's name is mentioned, her expression immediately drops into a look of serious realization. Moxie quickly notes that Edward belongs to the main branch of his own family. Vermil responds with a careless shrug, as if showing his absolute lack of concern for the familial connection. Rubbing her face in deep exasperation, Moxie reminds him that his own cousin would have possessed a rank 2 shield and demands to know how he possibly bypassed it. Vermil simply tells her that he punched him. Moxie's eyes narrow in sheer disbelief and frustration at his overly simplistic answer. Completely missing her point, Vermil unhelpfully demonstrates a basic striking motion to clarify what a punch entails. Moxie snaps back angrily, stating she understands the concept of a punch, but desperately needs to know how sheer physical force shattered a high-ranking magical defense. Realizing words are useless to explain his technique, Vermil suggests testing the strike on her directly. Vermil does not even hesitate. He accepts her challenge. He channels his magical energy into his fist as Moxie is taken by surprise. Vermil moves with blinding speed and delivers a punch, leaving Moxie stunned. Recovering from her shock, Moxie demands to know what he just did. Vermil replies that it was a feint and asks why she looks impressed. Moxie explains it was not a feint. Struggling to find the right words, Moxie explains that his intense, overwhelming focus on the spell had completely drawn her own attention away from his physical movements. With that out of the way, Vermil wonders aloud if he needs to be prepared to get attacked by his family. Snorting with amusement, Moxie waves off his worries and assures him that his family will not resort to outright murder over a bloody nose. Vermil exhales a heavy sigh of relief as Moxie predicts they will likely just send Edward's teacher to challenge and publicly humiliate him in a duel. Leaning against her desk with a disappointed sigh, Moxie confesses that she genuinely wanted to participate for her own entertainment. Because of this, Vermil simply asks what is stopping her from joining. Leaning against her chair, Moxie begrudgingly admits that his willingness to protect his student proves he is not the pathetic worm she initially assumed. Confessing she cannot side against him in this matter, Vermil thanks her and eagerly asks if this newfound respect means they are finally friends. Visibly irritated in absolute disgust, Moxie immediately threatens to smash his head through a wall if he ever repeats that and orders him out of her room. The scene shifts elsewhere. Someone approaches the old man in charge of the transport cannon. The old man tells the person it was a pleasure seeing him. The person turns out to be Magnus Allen. Magnus Allen responds with a question, demanding to know if Vermil comes here often. The old man confirms. Allen orders the old man to tell him when Vermil leaves. Allen walks away, talking about making a personal party for Vermil, but it is clear he is simply plotting to teach Vermil a lesson.